Hello friends, today we are going to discuss a comparative analysis of Raja Ram Mohan Rai's thought and Jyoti Phule's thought. We all know both Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Jyoti Phule belong to 19th century, and they are also known as the Renaissance political thinkers. They have questioned the social inequalities, social evils, and they have strived hard for the transforming the Indian society, and particularly Phule wanted to establish an egalitarian social order in the Indian society, while Jyoti Phule stressed upon social reform. Raja Ram Mohan Rai stressed upon establishing a society with dignity and self-respect. This is how both the thinkers are very relevant to Indian society, and Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Jyoti Phule belong to 19th century of Indian political thought, since they have questioned the blind faiths, irrational social superstitions, and religious blind faiths. These two philosophers are aptly called as the Renaissance political philosophers. So the Renaissance political philosophy of 19th century constitutes two major champions of social reform in Indian society. They are Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Jyoti Phule. In spite of having a similarity of social reform in Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Jyoti Phule, there are also certain contrasts and dissimilarities between the thinking patterns of Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Jyoti Phule. In today's class, we'll be discussing about the similarities and dissimilarities of Jyoti Phule's political thought and Raja Ram Mohan Rai's political thought. Renaissance political thought in India commenced in 19th century. We all know in India, the modern age commenced with the advent of British rule in 17th and 18th centuries. And the Britishers have introduced English education in Indian society. In 1813 Chapter Act of the Britishers brought in the Western English education into Indian society. So all the Indian middle classes who are well versed with the English education are also coming into exposure to the Western political ideas of liberty, equality, justice, rights, democracy, secularism, and various other political values. This is how 19th century has become a fertile ground for making social reform movements and attempts for social reform and social transformation in Indian society. So Renaissance political thought in India commenced in 19th century. And social and political thinkers of 19th century Indian political thought emphasized on social transformation and social reform. We all know that 19th century Indian society is filled with blind faiths, social orthodoxy, religious superstitions, economic exploitation, and various other disadvantages. In such a context, in such a historical context, the social and political thinkers of 19th century emphasized on social transformation and social reform. They wanted to transform the whole social order, and they wanted to establish an egalitarian social order based on equality, justice, and social justice, equality, and liberty. And these philosophers demanded assertion of social rights and political rights by people. And these philosophers also have demanded the government to facilitate the conditions for social reform in the Indian society. So, social and political philosophers and thinkers of 19th century Indian political thought, they have emphasized on social transformation and social reform, because the 19th century society was filled with social inequalities and social evils. Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Jyoti Phule are the prominent thinkers of modern political thought. So modern political thought started with Samaj movements, We all know Brahma Samaj, Arya Samaj, Divigyan Samaj, Prarthana Samaj, Sachisodak Samaj. So these are the social reform Samajas of Indian society. They have brought in a good deal of reform in the Indian society, both in the society, economy, and politics. And among them, Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Jyothi Phule are the prominent thinkers of modern Indian political thought. And modern age in India started in 17th and 18th century with the advent of British colonial rule in India. The Britishers have come to India in 1600 and they have consolidated with their annexations and with their acquisitions during 17th and 18th centuries. And by mid-19th century, they have consolidated their power, and Queen's Proclamation has come in 1858. So this long-drawn history of British rule in India has brought certain social reform legislations, the progressive administrative structures in the Indian society. That's why we can aptly say the modern age in India started in 17th and 18th century with the advent of British colonial rule. The Britishers have brought the judicial system in India, the education system in India, the departmentalization of administration in India, and they have also brought the communication and transport sectors, which are aligned to India, and they have made efforts for the progress of Indian society. That's why the modern age and development of India on scientific lines, both human development and also the economic development and social development, started from 17th and 18th centuries with the advent of British rule in India. And British rule in India and the commencement of modern age can also be termed as a Renaissance period. It's called Renaissance because its emphasis was on the revival of ancient ideas, ancient thinking patterns on scientific lines, the spirit of inquiry and scientific temper. In European societies, 13th century and 14th century marked the commencement of Renaissance. So the revival of Greek and Roman ideas in European societies are termed as Renaissance in Europe. But in Indian society, the same Renaissance occurred in 19th century with the commencement of the social reform movements in Indian society. So if we make a comparison between European societies and Indian societies, in European societies, 13th and 14th centuries marked the commencement of Renaissance, whereas in Indian society, 19th century is the starting point of Indian Renaissance. In European context, Renaissance means rebirth and revival of interest in the learning of ancient Greece and Roman ideas. So in the European context, Renaissance means rebirth. It's rebirth of Greek ideas, rebirth of the Roman ideas, which were disappeared, which were blurred in course of time during Middle Ages. But these ideas of scientific temper and spirit of inquiry were almost there as part of rationalist thinking in ancient Greece and Roman ideas. In Greek political thought, we have Plato, Aristotle, and other philosophers, Socrates and others. In these philosophers, and also in Roman ideas, in Roman philosophers, Polybus and Cicero. So in all the philosophies of these distinguished philosophers, we see rationalist ideas, ideas of political rationalism and political ideas filled with rationalism. So modern Renaissance period revived the interest of learning in ancient Greece ideas and Roman ideas. So in the European context, Renaissance means rebirth and revival of interest in the learning of ancient Greece and Roman ideas. So this is the meaning of Renaissance in European society. But in Indian society, Renaissance has a different meaning. Renaissance means questioning the social order, the unequal social order, challenging the inequalities, and examining the blind beliefs and religious superstitions, may be termed as Renaissance in the Indian context in 19th century. So we'll make a comparison between Raja Ram Mohan Roy's political philosophy and Jyoti Phule's political philosophy. And now we have established a lesson plan. According to this lesson plan, first we'll be discussing about Renaissance, meaning and nature in the Indian context. What is Renaissance? What is the meaning of Renaissance? And what is the nature of Renaissance in Indian society? And what is the basic difference on the idea of Renaissance between European context and Indian context? And likewise, after that, we'll be discussing about Renaissance political thought and different political thinkers. Renaissance political thought and different thinkers. And there are thinkers, some of them are called as social reformers, some of them are called as social revolutionaries or also transformation experts or philosophers who have emphasized on social transformation. And some of them are nationalists and some of them are religious revivalists. So there are four strands of political philosophy, Renaissance political thought in Indian society. So we'll be discussing the Renaissance political thought and different thinkers. After that, we'll be discussing the contemporary conditions of 19th century India. As we all know, 19th century India is an orthodoxical society filled with social cleavages, social classes, and there are also patterns of dominance. There are also patriarchy, upper class domination, there are economic exploitation. So under these conditions, how Renaissance has become a historical necessity. So what are the conditions that contributed for the emergence of Renaissance in Indian society? So contemporary conditions of 19th century India, we must learn to understand the features of Indian Renaissance thought. So there are certain features, distinct features of Indian Renaissance thought we'll be discussing. So in the latter part of the lesson, we'll be discussing what are the similarities between Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Jyothi Rao Phule. What are the similarities between the thinking pattern and political ideas of two great philosophers of 19th century. One is Raja Ram Mohan Roy and the other one is Jyoti Phule. While Raja Ram Mohan Roy established the Brahma Samaj movement, Jyoti Phule has established Satyasodak Samaj movement. So what are the similarities between these two philosophies? And after that, what are the contrast, what are the differences, and what distinguish between Raja Ram Mohan Roy's political ideas and Jyoti Rao Phule's political ideas? So similarities and contrasts between Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Jyoti Rao Phule's philosophies we'll be discussing. After that, we'll make a critical analysis, critical evaluation of both the philosophers. So now, first we'll be discussing what is Renaissance and what is its meaning and what is its nature in the Indian context. In the Indian context, Renaissance means a revival of ancient thinking. In the European context also, it's revival of the Greek thinking and Roman thinking, Greek ideas and Roman ideas. Revival of ancient thinking is very aptly said as Renaissance. In Indian context also, revival of ancient thinking. Indian society is considered as an Oriental society with so many scriptures like Vedas, Upanishads, epics, and various religious documentaries. So these scriptures have brought glory to India during ancient period. So the modern Renaissance period wanted to revive the ancient thinking. So these ancient scriptures appear to be religious, but there is a lot of science involved in it, according to some critics. So that's why revival of ancient thinking is one of the major and important features of Renaissance in Indian society. And second thing is encouragement to scientific temper and spirit of inquiry. As the 19th century society is filled with the social inequalities, social injustice, social evils, encouragement to scientific temper and spirit of inquiry is another important aspect of Indian Renaissance thinking. So, Renaissance thinkers wanted Indian society to be rational, It should be rationalistic. So encouragement to scientific temper and spirit of inquiry. This is another important aspect of Renaissance thinking in India. And thirdly, assertion of rights by people. People have so many rights. So rights are the social conditions for the realization of human goals and human objectives. So these social conditions are required for the betterment of lives of individuals. So that's why assertion of rights by people is another demand of Renaissance thinking. People may have political rights, economic rights, social rights, cultural rights, developmental rights. So assertion of rights by people is an important aspect of Renaissance thinking. And Renaissance basically stresses on prevalence of reason or religion. So it stresses on reason. It appeals for reason. It's an appeal for reason, and human being is endowed with reason and reasonable behavior in his day-to-day living. That's why prevalence of reason or religion. If one is attached more to religion, one may be guided by superstitions and blind faiths. That's why Renaissance thinking gives a call for the people to be reasonable and to be rationalistic in their day-to-day life. So prevalence of reason or religion is an important aspect of Renaissance in Indian context. Renaissance in India challenged the social inequalities and demanded social reform. So this is the nature of Renaissance in India. Renaissance in India has challenged the social inequalities. These social inequalities are the results of Varna system, caste system, subcaste system that was prevailing from time immemorial for centuries together. And it has created certain social cleavages among the people. It has made social divisions among the people based on Varna, caste and subcaste systems. So the Renaissance thinking challenged the social inequalities and demanded social reform in Indian society. And Renaissance in India resulted in many social reform movements. Particularly, the Renaissance thinking of 19th century has resulted in so many social reform movements: Brahma Samaj, Arya Samaj, Satyasodak Samaj, Prarthana Samaj, Divigyan Samaj. So these are various social service movements, social reform movements that have emerged in 19th century. So Renaissance in India resulted in many social reform movements. They are called as the Samaj movements. So these movements, the emergence of these movements mark Renaissance in Indian society. And Renaissance political thought also has different streams of thinkers. While some among the thinkers are social reformers, some thinkers are social revolutionaries, some thinkers are nationalists, and some thinkers are religious revivalists. So some thinkers, they wanted social reform in the society, and they wanted the social evils to be stopped. So that's how they wanted to reform the society, by stopping the social evils. But certain social revolutionaries, certain thinkers who considered as themselves as social revolutionaries, they want to reconstruct the social order. They want to reconstruct the relations, the interactions among the people based on equality, liberty, and justice. So they are termed as social revolutionaries. And there are also certain philosophers who are stressed on nationalism, nationalist aspirations, right to self-determination, and political independence, freedom from colonial rule. So these are called as nationalist thinkers. And there are also other philosophers who wanted to glorify the Indian past, and they wanted to revive the religious glorification. So they are called as religious revivalists. So Renaissance political thought in Indian context has many streams of political thinkers and social thinkers. While some of them are social reformers, others are social revolutionaries, nationalists, and religious revivalists. So political reforms, social reforms, and economic reforms were emphasized by Renaissance political thought. Now let us see the social reformers. Raja Ram Mohan Rai, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. These two are considered as the social reformers of Indian society, particularly the 19th century society. Brahma Samaj, Prarthana Samaj. These movements have established to question the social evils in Indian society. Particularly Indian society was plagued with social evils like Parda system, caste system, untouchability, underage marriages or the child marriages, forced widowhood, Paswini system, Jogini system, Parda system, Sati. So these are the social evils of 19th century. And social reformers wanted to put a full stop and put a pause to these social evils and want to establish a new society. So that's why they are called as social reformers. Among them, Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar are very prominent. And the other type of social reformers who wanted to revolutionize the social order, they are called as social revolutionaries. Jyothi Phule, Ramaswamy Naikar, Narayan Guru. And these are the important philosophers here. Here we can see the pictorial representation of these philosophers. First Jyothi Phule, second one is Raja Ram Mohan Rai, third one is Narayan Guru from Kerala. And in South India we have Ramaswamy Naikar, Periyar Ramaswamy Naikar. So these are the social revolutionaries, and they have inspired millions of people with their teachings. So they wanted to reconstruct the society based on liberty and equality and justice, social justice. So that's why they are called as social revolutionaries. They are much ahead of social reformers. While social reformers only opposed social evils, social revolutionaries questioned the social inequalities and they wanted to reconstruct the society based on equality and justice. That's why they are called as social revolutionaries. Among the social revolutionaries, we have Jyothi Rao Phule, Ramaswamy Naikar, Narayan Guru, and various other philosophers of Indian society. And there are also nationalist thinkers in Indian Renaissance philosophers. Among the nationalist thinkers, we have Devendranath Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore, and who aspired for a society with freedom and equality. They wanted freedom from foreign bondage. They wanted political independence from colonial rule. They wanted their national pride, their national glory should be accepted, and every individual should be guaranteed with a life with self-respect and dignity. And they wanted their state, the country, the nation to be self-sufficient and self-relevant, self-reliant, and they wanted the country to have the right to self-determination. That's why they are called as the nationalist philosophers. Among the nationalist philosophers, Devendranath Tagore and Rabindranath Tagore are important leaders. And after that, we also have religious revivalists. They want to glorify the Indian past. India having an ancient civilization of Indus Valley civilization. And this Indus Valley civilization, and after that, Indian society has produced volumes of ancient literature, Vedas, Upanishads, epics, Puranas, and various other scripts. And these philosophers of 19th century, particularly Dayananda Saraswati, Keshav Chandra Sen, they want to revive the glory of Indian society. So they are called as the religious revivalists. So this is how the Renaissance thinking in India has at least four streams of thinking. One is social reformers, Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. Second one is social revolutionaries, Jyothi Phule, Ramaswamy Naikar, Narayan Guru, and various other thinkers. And nationalist thinkers like Devendranath Tagore and Rabindranath Tagore. And religious revivalists like Dayananda Saraswati, Keshav Chandra Sen, and other thinkers. So this is how Indian political thinking, particularly the Renaissance political thinking in Indian society, as different streams of political thinking. When social reformers, social revolutionaries, nationalists, and religious revivalists found place in 19th century Renaissance movement in India. Now let us discuss about the contemporary conditions of 19th century. And these conditions have given rise to Renaissance thinking in India. And 19th century society was a socially divided society with the Chaturvarna system and the caste system, the sub-caste system. So Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, this Chaturvarna system was there in the Indian society. And besides this, there is also caste system and sub-caste system, which have divided the society on the lines of functional categorization. And it divided the society, and it also prohibited social interaction among the social communities and groups. There are also orthodoxical rules that prohibited and prevented people of one particular class interacting with other particular classes. That's why there are social divisions and orthodoxy in the Indian society during 19th century. And after that, the 19th century society also suffered with religious superstitions, blind faiths, polytheism, idol worship, and rituals. So religious superstitions are the irrational and unreasonable blind faiths. And besides this, there is also polytheism. Polytheism means worshipping many gods. Worshipping many gods is a practice in the Indian society. That's known as the polytheism. Polytheism was part of Indian society during 19th century. And likewise, there was idol worship. Idol worship was also there. And people are ritualistic. They used to perform even the religious activities with all rituals. So there were religious superstitions, blind faiths, polytheism, idol worship, and rituals. Besides this, the society was orthodoxical. There were social divisions in the society. So these are some of the contemporary conditions of 19th century. And there are also patterns of dominance. There are also patterns of caste dominance, gender dominance, and in some areas, the bureaucratic dominance. So where caste dominance is prevalent, the upper castes are always holding sway over the middle caste and lower caste, the underprivileged sections of the society. So upper castes have an advantage of owning a good amount of land on their name, and they used to dominate the society by virtue of their economic vibrancy. So, and the patterns of dominance, the upper caste domination, and also in every home there was gender domination. In the gender terms, it is the patriarchal dominance. The patriarchal dominance was also there in the Indian society. So, a male domination against the women. The women constitute 50% of the population in almost every society. It was only the male domination that has guided the society. So caste domination was there, gender domination was there, and there were also bureaucratic dominance, where the British officials or Indian civil servants with high-ranking positions used to dominate. They show their dominance on normal people and poor people. So this is how there were lots of patterns of dominance in Indian society during 19th century. And added to this, there was also economic exploitation in Indian society. In the economic exploitation, all the upper classes, who are the owners of thousands of acres of land, hundreds of acres of land, they used to exploit the poorer sections of society. So contemporary conditions of say 19th century was marked by patterns of dominance, the caste dominance, gender dominance, bureaucratic dominance, and there was also economic exploitation in Indian society. And there were also social evils. very rampantly prevalent in Indian society during 19th century. Among these evils, we have Parda system, Sati, underage marriages, dowry system, female infanticide, untouchability. These are some of the heinous social practices that were prevalent in Indian society in 19th century. And these social evils have brought a very stumbling block for the progress of human civilization or human society in Indian context. And social evils also have prevented social intercourse, and they have also nullified the concepts of equality and liberty in the Indian society. So social evils of 19th century also were very much prevalent and rampant in Indian society, and consequently there are also protests against these social evils. And these protests have come in the form of social reform movements. We have Brahma Samaj, Arya Samaj, Satyasodak Samaj, Prarthana Samaj, Divigyan Samaj. Likewise, these societies are the Samaj movements have emerged as a result of the social evils like Parda system, Sati, underage marriages, dowry system, female infanticide, untouchability. And there are also many social evils which are not mentioned here. In some villages, the Sati, and in some villages, the Jogini system, the Baswini system, the temple girl system was also prevalent in some societies. So these are all the social evils that forced 19th century philosophers to oppose the social evils and bring reform in the society, and oppose the social inequalities based on social evils, and reconstruct the society based on egalitarian principles. So this is another important aspect. Now let us discuss what are the similarities and dissimilarities between Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Jyoti Phule. First, we'll be discussing the similarities. In the similarities, we can say Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Jyoti Phule both have opposed the social evils and untouchability. They have unanimously opposed all the social evils and untouchability. So this is a similarity between Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Jyoti Phule. And there are so many social evils prevalent in 19th century, as we have just mentioned here: the Parda system, the underage marriages, the forced widowhood among women, and Sati, the practice of Sati, and also a poor education for women, virtually non-education of women, illiteracy prevalent in 19th century, untouchability, Parda system, Jogini system, Baswini system, temple girl system. So these are some of the systems which are also called as the social evils. And the upper caste in the society have also made the lower caste to be untouchable in 19th century. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Jyoti Phule opposed these social evils and untouchability. That's the similarity between both the philosophers. And they're also against polytheism and ritualism. And Brahma Samaj movement is stressing upon monotheism. It wanted the religious worships only for one God. God is one. There are no many gods, as God is one. But the Indian society practiced the polytheism, or worshipping many gods. So against this polytheism, the Samaj movements of 19th century stressed upon the monotheism, monotheistic philosophy. So they are against to polytheism and ritualism, ritualistic practices in religions. So this is also an important aspect of similarity between Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Jyoti Phule. And after that, they have stressed on rationalism. They have opposed the blind faiths. They have opposed the social superstitions, religious superstitions, and religious blind faiths. And they wanted the people to question the basis of the social evils and blind faiths, religious superstitions. That's why both the philosophers wanted the people to be scientific, scientific inquiry, spirit of scientific temper, and spirit of inquiry. And these two important principles, scientific temper and spirit of inquiry, they have guided the lives of Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Jyoti. And they wanted people to imbibe the habits of scientific temper and spirit of inquiry, to challenge the social evils of 19th century. That's why they are called as the rationalist philosophers. And they've also emphasized on inculcation of human values in the society. There were so many inhuman practices prevalent in 19th century. Sati was an inhuman practice. Child marriage was an inhuman practice. Female infanticide was an inhuman practice. So they wanted human values. Their emphasis is on human values. They wanted the society to be humanistic, and human values should be respected. So the emphasis on human values is also a similarity between Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Jyoti. So both the philosophers have stressed the need to have human values. Human values only brings progress to the human civilization, according to these philosophers. And importance on women's liberation. Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Jyoti Phule stressed upon the need to have women's liberation. Women should be educated. Women should be liberated. All the social evils that are termed against women should be questioned and challenged. That's how they gave importance to women's liberation. They wanted the patriarchal dominance to be stopped, and they wanted equality, liberty, and justice in every walk of life. That's why they have demanded gender sensitivity and women empowerment. They wanted women education. They wanted the women to challenge and question the patriarchal dominance and age-old patterns of dominance on womanhood. So that's why importance on women liberation is also a similarity between Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Jyoti Phule. Both have established Samajas. While Raja Ram Mohan Rai has established the Brahma Samaj movement, Jyoti Phule has established the Satyasodak Samaj movement. So these two Samajas, one is the Brahma Samaj movement established in 1828, and the other one is the Satyasodak Samaj movement established in 1873. And these two Samajas wanted the people to assert their rights, civil rights, political rights, economic rights, cultural rights, and developmental rights. So they have established Samajas, Samaj movements. One have established the Brahma Samaj movement. The Raja Ram Mohan Rai has established the Brahma Samaj movement, while Jyoti Phule has established the Satyasodak Samaj movement. So both the Samajas, both Brahma Samaj and Satyasodak Samaj movement, have demanded social reform and social transformation. This is an important similarity between Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Jyoti Phule. And both have favored British rule on certain aspects. Both Raja Ram Mohan Rai and also Dayanand and also Jyoti Phule have favored British rule on certain important aspects. While Raja Ram Mohan Rai supported the British for their progressive legislation against the social evils like the sati, parda system, underage marriages, Jyoti Phule supported the British government for introducing English education in Indian society. This is considered as a boon for the Indian society. And as a result of English education in Indian society, the middle classes, the linguist learned middle classes, have turned out to be social reformers in Indian society. That's why they have Jyotiba Phule supported the British rule in India simply because the Britishers have introduced the Western style of education in Indian society, Western type of education in Indian society. So both favored British rule on certain aspects. So these are the similarities. In the similarities, we can say opposition to social evils and untouchability. Both the philosophers, Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Jyotiba Phule, opposed social evils and untouchability. And both are against to polytheism and ritualism in their religious matters. And they gave a call to the society to be monotheistic and be non-ritualistic. So this is an important aspect. And after that, there is a lot of similarity between Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Jyotiba Phule in matters of their stress on rationalism. Both have favored rationalist thinking, devoid of blind faiths, religious superstitions. So the stress on rationalism, both the philosophers have given rise to social reform and social transformation and wanted people to have the spirit of inquiry and scientific temper in their day-to-day lives. And they have also emphasized on human values in Indian society. Likewise, both have given importance to women's liberation. They have given importance to women's liberation in Indian society. And both the philosophers have established Samaj movements, while Raja Ram Mohan Roy has established the Brahma Samaj movement in Indian society, and Jyotiba Phule has established the Satyasodak Samaj. So both the Brahma Samaj movement and Satyasodak Samaj movement have stressed upon the people to have equality, liberty and justice in their lives and reconstruct the society. While Jyotiba Phule wanted to transform the society by establishing a new social order with education, Raja Ram Mohan Roy wanted to redress the social evils in the Indian society and wanted to revive the glory of Indian society. So both have established the Samaj movements. While Raja Ram Mohan Roy has established Brahma Samaj movement, Phule has established the Satyasodak Samaj movement. And both favored British rule on certain aspects. As I have told you, both have favored British rule and supported the British rule on certain aspects. While Brahma Samaj movement and Raja Ram Mohan Roy supported the British for its social reform, progressive legislation, and other aspects, Jyotiba Phule supported Britishers for introducing English education in Indian society, particularly the Western scientific education, European education in Indian society. So both favored British rule, not completely, but only on certain aspects. Both have supported the British rule in India. And after that, now let us discuss the differences between Jyotiba Phule and Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Phule is both an activist and a philosopher. He has established the Satyasodak Samaj movement and he is a vigorous activist. He has established so many schools for the women education in Maharashtra soil. And he has also written so many books. Among them we have Tritiya Ratna, Gulamgiri, and various other important books. And with these books, he has claimed himself both an activist and also a philosopher. So he's a theoretician, philosopher on the one hand. On the other hand, he's an activist. He's very dynamic with his Satyasodak Samaj movement. But Raja Ram Mohan Roy is only a philosopher. We cannot see any activism in Ram Mohan Roy's activity, but he only stressed upon idol worship, against idol worship, monotheism, against to untouchability, and he was in favor of women's liberation and widow remarriages, against opposition to sati. So this is how he's more like a philosopher than an activist. And secondly, Raja Ram Mohan Roy stressed on religious revivalism, while Phule stressed on rationalism. Phule wanted scientific education, people to be scientific. People should have the scientific temper and spirit of inquiry as part of their rationalist thinking. So he stressed upon rationalism, and Raja Ram Mohan Roy stressed upon religious revivalism. He wanted the state to revive the world glory, the ancient glory of India. India was considered as an Oriental society during ancient times. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy wanted to revive India's glorious past and reclaim the lost glory of Indian society. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy stressed upon religious revivalism, while Phule stressed on rationalism. Phule wanted people to be scientific, with scientific temper and spirit of inquiry. And likewise, Phule strived hard for empowerment of underprivileged, while Raja Ram Mohan Roy strived for mass awareness. There is also criticism on Raja Ram Mohan Roy that his effort on social reform was confined itself only to the upper caste women, upper caste reform, upper caste social reform, against the social evils of upper caste. So this was the criticism against Raja Ram Mohan Roy. And Raja Ram Mohan Roy stressed on the need to have mass awareness for striving against social evils in Indian society. Whereas Phule strived hard for the empowerment of the underprivileged. The underprivileged sections or the historically disadvantaged sections who are suffering embarrassment and humiliation, abomination for so many centuries. He wanted the underprivileged sections to reclaim their rights, assert their rights, social rights, economic rights, political rights, cultural rights, and developmental rights. So Phule strived hard for the empowerment of underprivileged sections of Indian society, while Raja Ram Mohan Roy strived for mass awareness. And there is also another important difference between Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Phule. Phule's appeal was wider, which included assertion of rights against slavery, social evils, and blind faiths. His appeal was very broad. His political thinking consists of so many things. He gave a call for assertion of rights, particularly for the underprivileged sections. And he's against to slavery. In his book Gulamgiri, he has made an analogy between American blacks and Indian underprivileged sections and wanted the people to come out of the slavery. And Phule's thought also included his opposition to social evils like Parda system, underage marriage system, female infanticide, untouchability, Jogini system, Baswini system, temple girl system. So this is how Phule's thinking has multidimensional, like assertion of rights, opposition to slavery, opposition to social evils, and opposition to blind faiths, and stress on rationalism. So there are so many aspects, and Phule's thinking is considered as much wider than Ram Mohan Roy's thinking. Ram Mohan Roy is against to social evils like the untouchability, Parda system, the underage marriages, Sati system. So Phule's appeal is much wider compared to Raja Ram Mohan Roy's appeal. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was against the social evils, but Phule's appeal was wider, which include assertion of rights and his opposition to slavery and opposition to social evils and blind faiths. And likewise, Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Jyoti Phule has another important contrast. That is, Phule considered education as a dynamic tool for social progress. That's why he himself has established so many schools in Maharashtrian society. From 1848 to 1852, he has established some 18 educational institutions in Maharashtrian society. A total number of 273 students mostly from upper caste, minorities and underprivileged sections, have benefited due to education. And he has also made his wife Savitribai Phule as the first female teacher of modern India. So Phule considered education as a dynamic tool for social progress. And he has made so many efforts for the progress of education in Indian society. He has also given a memorandum to the Hunter Commission, William Hunter Commission, or the Indian Education Commission in 1881. When William Hunter was appointed by Lord Ripon to go into the educational system of Indian society, Jyothi Rao Phule has submitted a memorandum to the Hunter Commission and pleaded for more allocations for establishing educational institutions in Indian society. That's why Phule considered education as a dynamic tool for social progress, whereas Rajaram Mohan Roy emphasized on social and mass awareness. He wanted people to be aware of the social evils and he opposed the social evils. So this is how the difference is also there. Now let's make a critical evaluation of both the philosophers. While Raja Ram Mohan Roy strived for the eradication of social evils, Jyotiba Phule strived hard for social transformation based on liberty and equality, and he wanted to reconstruct the society, transform the society, Indian society. That's an important aspect. Secondly, both have favored the British rule, but at the same time, Mahatma Jyotiba Phule by himself made certain efforts for the progress of women in underprivileged sections by establishing so many schools, education institutions. Whereas Raja Ram Mohan Roy was opposite to the social evils and he wanted the government to make social reform legislations against sati, legislations against dowry system, legislations against parda system, underage marriages. So he wanted the Britishers to take the initiative and reform the society against the social evils. But Jyotiba Phule, he himself took initiative and wanted to educate the people by establishing many educational institutions in Indian society. So that was the difference between Mahatma Jyotiba Phule and Rajaram Mohan Roy. In spite of many differences, we can only conclude that Rajaram Mohan Roy and Mahatma Jyotiba Phule were two great philosophers and championed the cause of social reform and social transformation of Indian society in 19th century. Thank you, friends. Thank you very much.